Hi, it's Katrina. Number 10. Predator X. Researchers have discovered a new species of giant marine reptile that roamed the world's seas about 150 million years ago. The animal is called Pliosaurus funke, and it was once a terrifying predator of the deep ocean. This thing was about 40 feet long, and its head was bigger than most humans, measuring roughly 6.5 feet in length. It also had a devastatingly powerful bite, 4 times stronger than that of the Tyrannosaurus rex. Paleontologist Patrick Druckenmiller from the University of Alaska Museum called P. funke a top predator of the sea. He said the creature had teeth that would have made a T-Rex whimper. Although the monster was described as a new species in 2012, the original discovery of its fossils goes back to 2006. That was when scientists unearthed a pair of giant skeletons in Svalbard, Norway, a string of remote islands between Europe and the North Pole. Researchers were so shocked by the massive bones they found that they dubbed the creature Predator X. It was a type of pliosaur with a short neck. It had 4 huge paddle-shaped limbs, and it could practically fly through the water, snacking on plesiosaurs and other creatures as it went. Number 9. 7th Century Treasure. An excavation at a UK housing site yielded one of the most impressive archaeological treasures of 2022. Archaeologists in London found a 1,300-year-old necklace. What's even more fascinating is that they say the necklace could shed new light on what life was like for people living in 7th century England. This was a tough time for Britain, a period in history when paganism was fighting with Christianity for people's allegiance. The necklace was discovered during the construction of a new housing development in Northampton. It was buried with a powerful woman who may have been an ancient aristocrat from the days of the Anglo-Saxons. However, archaeologists aren't entirely sure who she was, but they've guessed that she may have been an early Christian leader. Lynn Blackmore from the Museum of London Archaeology said the items found in the mystery woman's grave are an obvious statement of wealth. The items are also indicative of Christianity, but Blackmore was insistent that nobody knows who the woman is. She was clearly devout and could have been a nun or a princess, but there is currently no way of knowing. The necklace itself is a fascinating piece of history. It has a rectangular gold pendant decorated with a cross motif, inlaid with garnets. The necklace was also made out of repurposed Roman gold coins and precious stones. It was created when Northampton was part of the Kingdom of Mercia in the 7th century. Around that time, the kingdom was converted to Christianity, and just a few decades later, the practice of burying people with luxury goods died off. Number 8. Ancient Levi jeans. The oldest known pair of Levi jeans recently sold at auction for a whopping $113,959. These jeans were found in the wreckage of the SS Central America, a ship that sank on its way to New York in 1857. The jeans were among 270 other artifacts from the Gold Rush era, a collection that sold for nearly $1 million. The SS Central America, nicknamed the Ship of Gold, was a steamer operating between the eastern coast of the US and Central America in the 1850s. But when the ship steered straight into a hurricane, she sank to the bottom of the ocean with 425 of her passengers and crew. The ship also went down with 30,000 pounds of gold, which helped spark the notorious financial panic of 1857. It was the first financial crisis that swept across America, partly blamed on Samuel F. Morse and his invention of the telegraph in 1844. With the loss of such an unprecedented amount of gold, early Americans panicked that their economy was going to crash, and they were scared their country would go broke. The ship was discovered in 1988, and over the next few years, gold and artifacts were recovered from the wreckage. The total value of the gold was estimated at about $100 million. This caused legal issues when 39 insurance companies came out of the woodwork, claiming they had a right to the treasure because they paid for damages 2 centuries ago. But aside from the gold, there were other fantastic artifacts, such as the ancient pair of Levi jeans. Number 7. The Sacred Owl. When archaeologists began to find carved owls at ancient archaeological sites in Spain, they thought they were dealing with something magical. The owls were carved out of hard pieces of slate, and they thought they were totems meant to represent a mysterious owl deity. The archaeologists were so bold that they claimed the owls were used specifically for rituals and ceremonial purposes. However, a new study done by researchers with the Spanish National Research Council says that wasn't the case at all. Instead, they claim the slate owls were carved by children and used as toys. The team of researchers looked at 100 out of the 4,000 engraved slate owls that have been found at various tombs and pit sites scattered across the Iberian Peninsula. All of them date back to the Copper Age, between 3500 and 2750 BC. Each owl also contained 2 perforations at the top, which researchers say could have been used to weave in real bird feathers. Juan Negro, the lead author of the study, said his first impressions when looking at the engravings was that they were simple to make. These things could be completed within just a few hours, and anyone could have made them, even kids who were bored on a Friday afternoon. And so, the study's conclusion was that the owls were popular art projects by the ancient children of the peninsula, and not magical ritual items like first proposed. Number 6. The Screaming Mummy. The Screaming Mummy was discovered in 1881 at the tomb complex of Deir el-Bahari, located across the Nile from the city of Luxor. The name Merit Hamun was inscribed on the mummification wrappings, but that didn't help archaeologists identify who the mummy was. There were multiple princesses in ancient Egypt by that name, including the daughter of the powerful ruler of Thebes, Seqenenre-Ta II, and Pharaoh Ramesses II. The Screaming Mummy could have been the daughter of either of the legendary rulers. But it's never been the mummy's heritage that people find so interesting. It's the fact that Merit Hamun's mummy was discovered frozen in a silent scream, her jaws wide open, and her teeth are showing, as if still yelling in agony. Many different scientists have put forward theories about why the dead woman was found contorted in such an ugly position. Then, in 2021, a group of researchers completed a computed tomography scan of the mummy. They discovered she had deposits of fatty plaques in her blood vessels, suggesting she died of a heart attack. They guessed Merit Hamun suffered from the heart attack when she was alone, and then she wasn't found for several hours when rigor mortis had already set in. Her mouth fell open in death and was frozen that way. But not everyone agrees with that hypothesis. Andrew Wade, an anthropologist from McMaster University, says it's more likely that the wrapping job was botched. The wrappings around her jaw weren't tight enough, and so her jaw fell open on its own as she decayed. And now for number 5. But first, I wanted to give a big shout out to Valentina Madden and Gustin Alarcon. Thanks so much for watching and supporting Origins Explained. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe and join the family. We'd love to have you. Number 5. Bog Sacrifices. Every now and then, a naturally mummified body is found near the surface of one of Europe's bogs. The only thing weirder than their remarkable state of preservation is the gruesome way in which most of these people died. In 1983, for more than 20 years, the local authorities in Cheshire suspected that a man named Peter Rain Bart murdered his wife, but strangely her body was never found. When news spread that a skull had been discovered in the Lindo Moss Bog that year, Peter broke down and finally admitted to killing his wife. What Peter didn't realize was that the skull didn't belong to his deceased wife, whom he'd ditched in the bog 2 decades prior. It belonged to a woman who lived 1,600 years ago, a cold case so ancient that police needed to call in archaeologists and paleontologists to solve it. The skull belonged to someone who was later nicknamed the Lindo Woman. She was exceptionally preserved after 16 centuries in the acidic, low-oxygen environment of the bog. Bacteria was never able to break down her organic tissue. One of her eyeballs was still preserved, and miraculously, so was her brain. Even the ancient Egyptians couldn't achieve such perfect preservation. Sadly, we still don't have much information about this woman. She lived during the Roman period, and she appears to have met a brutal death. This is something she has in common with dozens of other bodies pulled out of European bogs. They all seem to have been hanged, stabbed, or murdered violently and discarded in swamps. Number 4. Gold coins under the floor. In North Yorkshire, England, one of the largest stockpiles of 18th century gold coins were discovered by homeowners who were renovating their kitchen in 2019. The couple, who preferred to remain anonymous for their own safety, found a glazed cup underneath their kitchen floorboards. It was buried underneath the very foundations of their home. The glazed cup was about the size of a soda can, and it was filled to the brim with 260 gold coins. According to the Spink & Son auction house, the coins were made between 1610 and 1727. In terms of monetary value, this stash is worth an estimated $115,000 in today's currency. But because of their historical value, the homeowners are expected to receive nearly $300,000. Because England had such great records even in the 1600s, it wasn't hard to track down the family who once lived on the property. The coins were buried by Joseph and Sarah Fernley Maesters, a couple that was married in 1694. They were an influential family of merchants, getting rich off the import and export of timber, iron ore, and coal. The only real mystery is why in the world they left a large fortune buried underneath the floorboards of their home. What would you do if you found a bunch of gold coins under your floor? Let me know in the comments below. Number 3. Sardinia's Sacred Well. The Pozzo Sacro di Santa Cristina is an ancient and mysterious archaeological monument in Sardinia. It's a sacred well and one of the most impressive engineering accomplishments of the Nuragic civilization. The Nuragic people lived on the island of Sardinia, the second largest island in the Mediterranean, starting in the 18th century BC. They continued to occupy the island up until the Romans began expanding in 238 BC. After almost 2,000 years, the Nuragic culture was booted out of their homeland by merciless Roman soldiers. But even though they are gone, a lot of their ancient monuments survive to this day. The only source of information we have on these people are from their ancient ruins and a handful of notes written by Greek and Roman historians. They considered the Nuragic people more mythical than real, similar to how we think of the Atlanteans today. The sacred well was built around 1000 BC, and when it was first constructed, it was a truly magical place. A trapezoid-shaped staircase leads down a dark corridor into the earth, ending in the well chamber. During the equinoxes, the sun beams directly down the stairwell and reflects off the water in the chamber, in turn causing the underground room to glow. We think it was used by a water cult for astronomical rituals, but nobody knows for sure. Number 2. The Palace Door at Nimrod. Archaeologists digging in the ancient city of Nimrod have just made their first discovery since the site was blasted apart by ISIS in 2016. Michael Dante with the University of Pennsylvania assisted in the discovery of a 3,000-year-old, 6.5-foot piece of stone. This chunk of stone was once part of the doorway to the palace of the Assyrian king Adad-nirari III, who ruled between 810 and 783 BC. Nimrod was once the mighty capital of the Assyrian Empire. This giant piece of stone was part of the threshold leading into the king's great palace. But in the late 7th century BC, the Babylonians, Medes, and Persians teamed up together and brought Assyria to its knees. The city of Nimrod was ransacked, and the temple was largely destroyed. It was then left in ruins, only to be blown up by a radical Islamic organization thousands of years later. In 2015, the Islamic State attacked the city of Nimrod with bulldozers in an attempt to destroy history. After the site was retaken in 2016, it was reported that 90% of the ancient city was reduced to rubble. Somehow, this huge slab of stone is one of the only things that's remained unbroken. Number 1. Strange ancient art. Archaeologists think they have just found the remains of one of the oldest pieces of narrative art in the world. In late 2022, they found a 12-foot-long carved panel during the excavation of Cyberk in Turkey. This was an ancient Neolithic site occupied by early humans about 11,000 years ago. Interestingly, the carved piece of artwork is a little controversial, at least by our standards. On one side of the carving is a man standing completely nude, surrounded on either side by a pair of leopards. On the other side of the panel is another naked man standing with a bull. I don't know if it's safe to show you this artwork. This isn't the oldest piece of artwork in the world, but the Cyberk panel is more than art. It's telling a progressive story. The scenes appear to be linked to one another like these squares in a comic book. The biggest issue archaeologists are having now is that they don't know what kind of story is being told, especially with all the naked men and the fierce wild animals. Thanks for watching! Which of these discoveries was your favorite? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time. Bye!